Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I want to talk about Sola Scriptura, Bible alone. There is the assertion from Protestants. This is based on doctrine developed by Martin Luther, John Calvin, especially developed by John Calvin in his Institutes, that simply by reading the Bible, one will find final truth. Of course, we know that this did not bring final truth because we have endless numbers of schisms that contradict, disagree, cannot agree what the Bible actually teaches, cannot agree what the apostles taught based on this method of interpreting the Bible. Now, the method does make certain assumptions. It implies certain things. It glosses over certain steps. Let's have a look using logic to see why this method is incoherent, why it is false. So this is a logical argument against Sola Scriptura's coherence. Our first premise. All Protestants claim to base their faith and practice on the Bible alone. Of course, when I go online, I find that Protestants quibble over the word Protestant and who's a Protestant and what's a Protestant, and these are merely distractions and deflections from the simple fact that there is an issue. These are simply stratagems, sophistries designed to deflect from the problem. Now, of course, Sola Scriptura, or Bible alone, and of course they'll quibble and say, well, but Sola Scriptura is a Latin term. It's actually invented by the Catholic. It doesn't matter. It means the Bible alone. And this term has become very popular. In fact, Martin Luther has the 5 solas. So moving on. This includes the assertion that Scripture is the sole infallible authority for Christian doctrine. There's another premise. There is no infallible, universally agreed upon method to interpret Scripture. Hence, you have thousands of divisions, thousands of schisms within the Protestant umbrella. Now, different groups use varying methods, from literal, allegorical, historical, critical, etc., to determine this supposed truth, but there is no consensus. All of them claim to have achieved apostolic truth, but yet they can't agree what apostolic truth is. This is incoherent. This is chaos. Another claim that I hear always is that God is not a God of confusion. The Bible is not a book of contradiction. Yet Protestants are clearly confused. Protestants clearly contradict. Ask yourself, is the Bible Calvinist or is it Arminian? This is one of many issues, many contradictions that have been irreconcilable for centuries. Now, there is no infallible interpretive method described in Scripture itself. Therefore, interpretation is fallible and subjective to human limitations. Protestant groups, as our third premise, contradict each other on essential doctrines, e.g. the Trinity, Christ's divinity, baptism. So which one of the contradictory methods is true? By logical reasoning, they cannot all be true. Only one, at best, can be true. And if one is true, then that means hundreds of other groups are false, are teaching errors, are teaching false doctrine. This is something that I find people simply cannot admit. So empirical data shows there are thousands of denominations with mutually exclusive contradictory beliefs. Contradictory claims cannot both be true. This is the law of non-contradiction. Our fourth premise, if Sola Scriptura truly led to truth, then all the groups would converge on the same essential doctrines given the same infallible source. However, they disagree, they contradict, they cannot even agree what the truth is. So disagreement and contradiction would be minimal or resolvable by Scripture alone. Now, I will note that I have watched and read and listened to the most absurd, twisted logic, it's not even logic, it's sophistry, it's deceit, pretending to be Christian, pretending to be logic. It is merely an attempt to deflect from the very uncomfortable fact that there is no way to prove that any one group has achieved truth when all of them contradict. So an observation. In reality, there is rampant doctrinal division and contradiction among Protestants. If you would like, resolve the contradiction between Calvin and Arminius using just the Bible. They've both been trying for going on 500 years now. So this contradicts the expectation that Sola Scriptura leads to doctrinal unity and truth. So we're left with a dilemma. Either the apostolic deposit, which is the Bible, God's revelation, is contradictory and unclear, which contradicts Scripture's own claim that God is not the author of confusion, which is a quote that I hear regularly, or Sola Scriptura fails as a method to reliably lead to truth, giving me persistent contradictions and lack of interpretive consensus. A few additional considerations. Sola Scriptura implicitly requires an infallible interpretive authority or method, which it does not provide. Without an infallible interpreter, Scripture's authority cannot be effectively exercised. So this leads to a circular reasoning problem. This is relativism, undermining Sola Scriptura's claim to infallibility. What do we conclude? Sola Scriptura's claim to guarantee truth is logically incoherent. It cannot account for the widespread doctrinal contradictions and interpretive disputes among those who claim to follow it. The best anyone can do, as from what I have seen, is that someone can say, well, we're right. I am secure in my faith. I am secure. How do you know you're right? Because there is no distinction between Sola Scriptura and opinion. All of the other groups that you are contradicting arrived at their truths the same way as you did. It's really just preference. So the principle either leads to error or requires supplementation by non-scriptural authoritative interpretation, contradicting its own premise. Of course, relying purely on the Bible alone has led to nothing but schism, contradiction. Again, these contradictions cannot all be true. The majority of them, the vast majority, must be false. Therefore, these Christians are teaching falsehoods. So, a summary table for clarity. Scripture alone is infallible, is the claim. The logical outcome is it requires an infallible interpretation method, because Scripture doesn't simply start speaking. The book doesn't grow a mouth and tell you. It is you reading it, and then, of course, you interpret that, and it fits your biases, your preferences, your particular level of knowledge, your agenda, and so on. There is no infallible method provided, so interpretation is thus fallible and subjective. Contradictory doctrines arise. Contradiction means that error exists. And of course, this is one point that Protestants want to deny, refuse to acknowledge. And then, of course, these contradictions persist widely. These are widespread issues. So Sola Scriptura has failed to produce doctrinal unity, and it's been several centuries now. And we're looking at more of these schisms developing on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis. It's growing. It's not getting better. Scripture is not the author of confusion. God is not the author of confusion. Now, the apostolic deposit cannot be contradictory. So either the apostles were contradicting each other, and therefore Scripture is contradictory, Scripture is confused, and therefore Protestants are being apostolic by having confused, contradictory, disagreeing doctrine, or if Scripture and the apostolic Christianity they claim to follow is a single truth, then which one of these divergent doctrines that cannot agree what that truth is correct, if any of them? And therefore, Sola Scriptura is logically incoherent and incomplete. I'll leave that here. I hope you learned something. I hope you'll ponder this and realize that there is a serious problem with this particular doctrine. It is really nothing more than theology by opinion. So thank you very much. I wish you a wonderful day, and God bless.